Hello and welcome back to Dawn Chorus Writes, a Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction and audio fiction. This is the series The Truth Behind the Lie, written by Shika, narrated by Dawn, myself, hello, and it's for Shika's Wednesday, and we are now on part 19. So I hope you're enjoying it so far. Make sure you go and send Shika some love for writing it. All her information is down below. Make sure you give me some love by smashing that like button, comment down below what you think of it and what will happen in the next one, and make sure you subscribe so you do not miss out on future parts and other one-shots and series that are happening at the moment. And I hope you enjoy. Part 19. True to Adrien's letter, Maurice knocked on the door at exactly 8 o'clock. When Marinette opened it, the large man gave her an approving look and a small smile. "Papa, Adrien's bodyguard is here to pick me up," she called, a hand gripping her clutch with nervous force. "All right, sweetheart," Tom replied, coming out of the kitchen and kissing her softly on the forehead. "Have fun, and be back by 10:30, okay?" "Yes, Papa. Good night." She stood on tiptoes to kiss his cheek and step out into the hallway with Maurice. He gave her a friendly nod and offered her his arm on the way down the stairs. "Do you know what kind of event we're going to?" she asked shyly, never really having had much conversation with the imposing man who protected her crush. His smile grew wider, and he covered his lips with a finger to indicate secrets. Marinette smiled back at him. "A surprise, huh?" He nodded. "Is Adrien okay after what happened at school this afternoon?" She couldn't help but worry. He had looked so unhappy when he drove away after the kiss. That was part of the reason she had called Kagami, because she couldn't let herself spiral into worry about whether she had hurt Adrien somehow. The man let out a sigh and shrugged, teetering his free hand back and forth to indicate uncertainty. He pushed open the outside door and escorted her to the car, holding the door open for her. She blushed at the courtesy. "Thank you." He looked down at her for a moment, then patted her gently on the shoulder. She got the impression of being accepted as part of the family. Did Maurice think of Adrien more as a son instead of a job, just a body to be guarded? Was he approving of her being with Adrien? She knew he had heard them talking on the ride home from the market the first day, and he had certainly glared at Lila after Adrien had told him she had been threatening her. It was clear there was no love lost between the large man and the liar, but he knew the relationship between her and Adrien was fake, and he was still showing her this kindness. "Thank you for keeping him safe," she murmured gratefully. Maurice put his hand over his heart and inclined his head to her in a little bow before closing the door. The ride was a short one, and Marinette was surprised to see them pull through the mansion massive gates and up the side of the main building. Maurice escorted her from the car and through the dark towards the gardens. Suddenly, subtle lights sprang to life along the pathways, while the fountain sparkled like jewels in the night. Marinette gasped as they passed a large tree and the greenhouse came into view. It glowed amber in the dark. The bevels in the glass refracted the light onto the path in drops of gold. There, silhouetted against the glass, Adrien waited for her. Her mind blanked when she saw him. This was too close to some of the daydreams she had of him over the last 2 years to be real. She couldn't pinch herself without giving it all away if she was wrong, but she made do with clenching her nails into palm. "Yep, definitely hurts. So I'm either having a very lucid dream or I was hit by an Akuma. Is it wrong of me to hope it's a dream?" Her only consolation is how wide his eyes were, and the blush that stained his cheeks. He wore the same expression as he had when he first saw her all made up for the photoshoot. Maurice handed her over to Adrien with a smile and a bow before making his way into the dark. The boy himself was dressed in a dark suit and a shirt with a silver tie. He was a model, and she knew objectively that he was paid to look good in clothes, but she had to admit in the depths of her mind that, while Adrien in a t-shirt and jeans was handsome, Adrien in a black suit was heart-stopping. "Marinette, you look beautiful," Adrien breathed with a soft smile and nervous eyes. He raised a hand to his lips and kissed her fingers like he had done at the photoshoot, raising goosebumps up her arms. "Thank you for coming. Shall we?" He gestured at the glowing greenhouse behind him. She bit her lip and nodded, afraid of saying anything that would disrupt the moment, anything that would wake her from this dream. As it was, she was worried he would think someone was jamming out a drum solo on a nearby street from how loud her heart was pounding. Adrien wove his fingers through hers and led her into a beautiful greenhouse. The path inside was lined with candles around the edges, out of the range of a sweeping skirt, she noticed absently. Rose petals in red, pink, and white littered the floor, mirroring the roses above them. Marinette had never seen so many roses before. Roses in every colour, they came and stood in the beds, cascaded over the carved edges of marble basins, in curtains of silk or velvet petals, and climbed the metal trusses with exploring tendrils to hang blossoms from the arched ceiling. The scent was intoxicating, rich, sweet, and wild, like the rose petal wine her great uncle had sent her parents for an anniversary gift. The quiet trickling of an artificial waterfall in the small pond in the middle of the greenhouse could just barely be heard over the faint strains of piano music playing from Adrien's phone. "I didn't expect you to wear that," he said fondly, tracing the fine white embroidery on the edge of the draped sleeves formed from the sari. "The colour does bring out your eyes." "Thanks," she stammered shyly. "Why are we here? I thought you said we were going to a private event of some sort." He grinned and waved at the encompass of the greenhouse and the romantic atmosphere. "This is it." He looked both proud of setting this up and worried what she would think. "You have had the worst of all this mess since long before Kat and I became involved, and today was..." He paused as if he was trying to find the right word. "Long?" she offered, squeezing his hand to let him know that things were still okay between them. "Yeah, long." He scratched the back of his neck casually, but Marinette knew him well enough now to recognize it for what it was. It was one of Adrien's few tells, and he was nervous. "You said that you wished someone would set up a date for you, like that picture you showed me. The one Kat took you to instead of Ladybug?" She nodded. "Well, I figured random rooftops were a bad idea, since it's kind of hard to get to one if you're not a superhero, but I wanted to share this place with you anyway, so I combined the two." She could feel the tears prickling the corner of her eyes and her chest tighten as he took in the amazing bower of roses and how he had painstakingly tried to recreate a memory he had only seen for a minute or two on a piece of paper. "Adrien?" She breathed in wonder at this boy who never thought what he did was good enough and was worried she wouldn't like what he had done for her. "This is the most amazing thing anyone has ever. No one, not for me, really for me." Her watery eyes were pulled from scanning the beautiful setting by his hands on her face. He leaned down and pressed his forehead against hers in a wonderfully intimate gesture. "You deserve this and so much more, Marinette," he breathed. His breath played over her face in waves of cinnamon. She could roll up on her toes and kiss him. He was so close, and oh, how much she wanted to. But she still didn't know what he had in mind for this. Fake date? But it didn't make sense for this to be a fake. This was private, at night, hidden from the world behind curtains of roses, beveled glass, and high walls of the grass grounds. No one to see and report it. No cameras. There was just the two of them, alone in this dreamlike setting full of candlelight and roses. No, it didn't make sense for a fake date, but... Adrien loves my hugs, she thought, her mind swirling. He enjoys spending time with me and says he finds me soothing. There were several times when we nearly kissed, and he looked just as frustrated as I felt when we were interrupted. What if this isn't fake anymore? This used to be my mother's greenhouse, Adrien said wistfully, still leading her by the hand. He trailed his fingers over the roses along the stone path. She loved flowers of all sorts, especially roses, and this was her private sanctuary. He sighed and looked down at their joined hands. This is the only place here that feels like home, and I wanted to share it with you. He looked up at her timely, almost hopefully, and suddenly the storm in her head calmed. Adrien was opening up to her in ways she had never dreamed of. He was sharing his safety, his vulnerability, and his love of his mother with her. He cared about Marinette and wanted her to be part of his life. He wanted her. How exactly she wasn't sure, but she would be here for him in any way he wanted her to be. She had never really considered even getting this far with him, and it all felt unreal. But first, she needed to let him know how she felt. Tiki had been right. She had to be bold. This is beautiful, Adrien, she said with a small smile. This is something out of a movie. It's like a fairy tale. He beamed at her words, and once again, Adrienette was too sweet for her good. A fitting setting for a beautiful princess, my sweet. She was flushed and blushing, and there was nothing she could do about it. For a moment, Cat Noir flashed through her mind. I'm honoured to wear your favour, my sweet princess. I'll always be here for you too, no matter what. Marinette struggled to ground herself back into the moment. She was with Adrien. Cat Noir loved Marinette, and she was with Adrien. Are you trying to set this next stage for our little story? He ran his thumb over her knuckles in a delicate dance as his eyes never left hers. It does feel like a romantic climax to a movie, doesn't it? He leaned towards her a little, and her breath caught in her throat as her heart pounded madly. Does this fit for what you would have wanted for our story? Marinette opened her mouth and her mind blanked, causing her to go red all over and let out a soft, inarticulate noise that could probably only be heard by dogs. Adrien blinked at her, startled, then burst out in the same full-hearted laugh that had captured her heart 2 years before. She brought up the draped sleeve to the sari to cover her face in embarrassment, but even then she couldn't help the giggle that escaped her. No matter what it cost her, she always wanted him to be happy like this. He gently pulled her arm away from her face so the drape no longer hid it. His smile full and fond. Did I tell you? You're cute when you blush, my sweet. His words, said in that soft, low voice, almost like a purr, left her trembling. He took in her look and how her fingers took in his before taking a step back to give her more space while still holding her hand. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable, Marinette. I would never want to do that. No, you never would, she whispered, giving him a shy smile. The faint trace of worry in his eyes faded behind the happy glow. Good. Come on, I have another surprise for you. As eager as a puppy, he guided her around the pond and waterfall at the centre of the greenhouse to a little alcove among the roses. As eager as a puppy, he guided her around the pond and waterfall at the centre of the greenhouse to a little alcove among the roses with a bench and electric keyboard. Adrien bowed her into a seat on the bench with another kiss to her fingers before sliding into next to her. "You said yesterday you've never heard me play aside from band practice with Kitty section," he says, switching on the keyboard and changing a few settings. "Yeah? Well, I thought I would play something for you, if you like." Here she was, wrapped in sapphire silk, surrounded by candlelight and drinking in the scent of roses, and now he wanted to play something just for her? If she wasn't already sitting down, she definitely would have gone weak at the knees. "Yeah, that would be great." He smiled at her and turned to play. His left hand started a sad, simple tune, and then his right danced into a haunting melody. It was beautiful, full of longing and sadness and emptiness left unfulfilled. It swept through her in waves of loneliness that pricked at her eyes once more and tightened her throat. Then the feeling changed as the music expanded. The longing was still there, but now it felt fuller, richer, less lonely. It was the kind of music a couple would waltz to in a private romantic moment like this one. And if this had been the story world she had created for them, they would have. She could almost feel Adrien's arms around her, cradling her as he swept her off her feet on wings of music. The emotions rose up and down with the tempo as Adrien's fingers flew over the keys, gradually slowing as the notes grew higher and softer until the final chord was like a lover's kiss, tender and full of the sweet promise of things to come. Marinette just stared at Adrien's hands as the tears slid from her eyes. Her hands were those of a maker, a baker, someone who would craft and invent and design, but she doubted she would ever create something as beautiful as this moment. "Marinette?" He made her name a question, one she desperately wanted to understand. It was whispered, his hushed voice appropriate for the tension she could still feel growing between them. He wiped away her stray tears and gave her a look she could only think of as tender. "Sorry, just being silly." She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "What is it? Cold?" Adrien stroked her cheek, brushing her hair back behind her ear, then blushed and pulled away. Looking down at his lap, he murmured, "Mariage dis-moi." His heart was pounding madly against his ribs, and his cheeks burnt. Marinette was wrapped in the sapphire blue sari he had bought her, her knees brushing his on the bench, and her eyes had never looked wilder or more lovely. He found himself compulsorily swallowing as his throat turned into the Sahara. Adrien had just played the most romantic love song he knew. He had created that night on the rooftop down to the smallest details, and he was hoping that the look in her eyes was more than just gratitude. Oh, he wanted to kiss her, just pull her in and not let her go until she was breathless and rosy and his. To tell her without words that she was amazing, wonderful, and everything he wanted. Confessing to her earlier as Kat had been impulsive on his part. She had needed his comfort and support, but cradling her in his arms in the rose of a bedroom had filled him with so much love that the words had just flowed out of him like wine from a broken bottle. She was what he wanted, more than he had ever wanted anything except for staying Cat Noir. She wanted him in her life just as he was. She needed him to comfort and to hold her steady against the storms and dragons of life and protect her from sadness and dark butterflies. She was everything. But first he had to tell her, and he couldn't bring himself to do so. Not with his throat as dry as sand and his mind drowning in the ocean of her eyes. Why were words so hard? He had never had this trouble with confessing to Ladybug, and the words had gushed from him like a fountain when he was Cat. So why couldn't Adrien just tell Marinette how much she meant to him? How she was his princess and he loved everything about her, and the rough patches on her fingers from sewing and knitting needles, and the way she made him laugh, and the way he thrilled when he saw her stand up to Chloe and Lila, and the way she fit perfectly in his arms as if she had been made for him. The way she filled him up and fought for him like no one else. The way her kiss had made him fly. "Marinette," he whispered, his voice raspy and leaving him wondering if he would actually purr without being transformed. The blush on her cheeks deepened, her eyes locked onto his, and she bit the corner of her bottom lip in a way that tested his self-control. "Adrien, I... It was her turn to swallow. Was she as nervous as he was? Why didn't that thought help at all? He gave her a soft smile, took her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "It's okay, my sweet. Take your time. I'm listening." She looked down, fiddling her clutch with anxious fingers. "I bought you something, but with all this..." Her worried eyes scanned her little oasis of roses. "It's silly." "Marinette, everything you do is with love. I would never think it's silly unless it's meant to be." He tipped her chin up to look at him. "I would like to see it, please." She fumbled her purse open and held out a short length of red ribbon, the same as she had given to Cat earlier. "You see, Cat said he'd be my champion because he called me princess and all, so when he stopped by earlier and I feel pretty down and he cheered me up, and I gave him a favor like a princess would give her champion before a tournament, but I realized that you had been there for me throughout all of this, and because he doesn't want to, but that video of Lila was bad enough, but he said he was supportive of our relationship even though it was set up to be fake, and..." He couldn't help but chuckle. "Breathe, Marinette. I'm not going to run away." She blushed as red as the roses growing beside her. "Sorry," she stammered, embarrassed. "A favor for my knight." She held the red ribbon out once more. Adrien was sure he was as red as she was. She wanted to give Adrien a favor as well. Was this because she loved him back, or did that mean she liked him the same way she liked Cat? A flash of jealousy burned in his heart. Who was this buttercup boy who had so thoroughly won over his sweet princess that she couldn't see anyone else? No. Anything's worth gaining. No. Anything worth gaining is worth fighting for, and I'm already fighting for her. I'm not going to lose her again. "Marinette, I have something important to tell you," he said, his voice almost stern. Her eyes widened in panic. "You don't like it? I'm so sorry. I knew it was silly. Forget it. Never mind. No, that's not what I meant," he exclaimed, grabbing the ribbon and clutching it to his heart. "No, this means the world to me." Her ocean eyes were confused and pained. "Then what did you mean?" He took her face in his hands, feeling the cool smoothness of her skin. "Marinette, these last few weeks have been the best of my life. The market, the photo shoots, having you at my side at school, all the little things we've done. The market, the photo shoot, having you at my side at school, all the little things you've done for me. You've made me feel that I am so much more than a face or a label. It's like you've made me come alive. I can never thank you enough for any of it," He leaned in slightly, and he shivered as her hands crept up to grasp his lapels. "But I need you to know." "Adrien, I have something to tell you too," she breathed, inching closer until the only thing keeping his lips from claiming hers were the words hovering between them. "What is all this?" a cold, disdained voice announced, shattering the moment and causing his heart to free fall into his stomach. Adrien knew that voice all too well. His father had found them. Thank you for listening to part 19 of The Truth Behind the Lights. I mean, seriously, Gabriel, the timing? Oh, not happy. I hope you enjoyed that part, and looking forward to the next one. Make sure if you did, make sure you smash that like button. Comment down below what you thought of it and what will happen in the next one. Make sure you go and send some love over to Shika for writing it, and make sure you subscribe so you do not miss out on the next part. Seriously, and other one-shots and other series that are happening at the moment. And I hope you are good, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.